Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife did was send me a text while she was away with her ex, telling me she was in Key West with Trevor for a week, adding, "Don't be jealous," and ordered me to handle Ava, like I was just a reliable parent on standby instead of her husband. Here's what happened. The text arrived at 5:12 p.m. on a Tuesday. I stood at the stove in our kitchen, stirring marinara in slow circles away I always did. Clockwise 3 turns, then a scrape along the edge so nothing clung. My daughter, Ava, 7 now, sat at the breakfast nook coloring a sunflower, humming a tune from her after-school choir. My phone chimed casual and ordinary, and my hand moved on reflex. I expected a vendor update or my cousin asking about Sunday service. Instead, it was my wife, Nia. "I'm in Key West with Trey for the week. Don't be jealous. I needed air. Handle Ava." If you've ever been blindsided by one message that changed everything, stay with me, because what I did next was calm, legal, and unstoppable, and it ended where she never expected. Trevor Langston, her college boyfriend who supposedly belonged to the past. 3 months earlier I had asked, carefully, about late-night messages and her quick smiles at the screen. Nia had replied with that particular emphasis she used when she wanted a topic buried. "Seriously, Darius, it's nothing." Now my wooden spoon paused mid-stir, suspended over bubbling red. Something heavy settled behind my ribs, not sharp like anger, more like a weight dropping into place. I didn't let my face change. My work in corporate risk had trained me to keep my voice level even when a deal turned hostile. Ava didn't look up. She pressed hard with her green crayon, determined to stay inside the lines. "Dad, dinner soon?" she asked, drawing out the word soon the way she did when she was trying to be patient. I answered with the steady tone I use in client calls, the one that never betrayed anything. 5 minutes, sweetheart." I set my phone face down near the salt and pepper shakers and went back to stirring. My hands kept rhythm while my thoughts sprinted. Nia had kissed my cheek that morning, smelling like citrus lotion, and said she was heading to Atlanta to help her sister with a situation. I had believed her because belief had become my habit. 11 years of marriage, shared accounts, a brick 2-story in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, weekend errands at South Ridge Plaza, school pickup lines, the little rituals that made a life feel sturdy. Nia liked tidy narratives. She told them with confident certainty, as if saying something firmly made it true. That text didn't just reveal a trip. It exposed the way she viewed our home, something stable enough to leave without asking. I plated Ava's pasta and sat with her, nodding at her story about a classmate who kept stealing erasers. Inside, I started arranging steps the way I arrange contingency plans. After dinner, I supervised homework, signed a permission slip, and listened to Ava practice spelling, while the ceiling fan clicked softly overhead. When bedtime came, she climbed into my lap with the sleepy trust kids carry like a blanket. She smelled like cocoa butter and bubblegum toothpaste. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "You always keep promises." The words tightened my throat. I held her an extra beat, my fingers tapping twice, my nervous tell against a pajama sleeve. "I love you too, Ava." I managed. When she drifted off, I lingered at her doorway, watching the nightlight throw warm shapes across her walls. Hurt hardened into something more controlled, colder like metal cooling after heat. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of bed and finally replied to Nia. "Understood. We're fine. Be safe." No questions, no pleading, no accusation. I typed the words with the same restraint I used when a CEO tried to corner me into a bad contract. Then I called someone I hadn't needed for myself until that moment. Malik Gardner answered on the second ring. We'd been roommates at Howard and stayed close even after our lives scattered. He'd become a family law attorney in Raleigh, the kind who didn't waste language. "Darius," he said, instantly awake. "This isn't a social call." "I need you," I replied. "Tonight." Malik didn't ask for details over the phone. He just said, "My office, 40 minutes." I drove through Charlotte's evening traffic with the radio off because music felt like noise pretending to be comfort. The city lights blurred at the edges of my vision, and memory kept cutting in. Nia laughing at a food truck festival, the way she used to grip my hand when crossing busy streets, the proud exhaustion on her face when Ava was born. I had always blamed stress when Nia grew short-tempered, always told myself I could carry more. Now I wondered how long she'd been stepping outside our life, while I kept reinforcing it from inside. Malik's office sat above a clothes insurance storefront near Uptown. When he opened the door, he wore jeans and a worn hoodie, his locks tied back, glasses perched low on his nose. "You look like you skipped breathing," he said, leading me down a hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. I gave him my phone. He read Nia's message once, then again, slower. The corner of his mouth tilted in a grim, professional way. "She put it in writing," he said. "That's a gift she didn't mean to give." His tone stayed neutral, but his eyes sharpened. "Tell me everything from the top." I spoke in clean sentences, like delivering a report. The lie about Atlanta. The name, Trevor. The timing. Malik listened without interruption. Fingers steepled, his foot making a quiet, repetitive tap against the floor. "What do you want?" he asked when I finished. "Reconciliation, separation, full divorce?" I met his gaze. "I want Ava protected. I want the house secured. I want my assets insulated. And I want Nia to understand that. I'm not her fallback plan." Malik exhaled through his nose. "Family court isn't a boardroom," he warned. "But strategy still matters. Documentation matters more." I nodded. "Then we move fast." For the next 2 hours, Malik laid out the legal terrain in plain language. Custody standards, temporary orders, financial boundaries, and importance of stability. School routines, living arrangements, a calm parent. He had me write down my daily schedule and Ava's, because judges love predictable structure. He told me not to text anything emotional and not to threaten. "Silence is often stronger," he said. We discussed accounts, credit lines, and what I could legally separate immediately. Malik sent messages to a colleague who handled forensic accounting and gave me a number for a private investigator in Florida. When I left, the first filings were already being drafted. On the drive home, grief hit like the weather. I pulled into a quiet lot near a closed diner called Maple and Main, parked under a flickering streetlight, and finally let tears come without bargaining. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I hated crying because it felt like losing control, and control was the one thing I could still provide Ava. After several minutes, I wiped my face with my sleeve, inhaled slowly, for counts in, for counts out, my grounding habit from stressful negotiations. I told myself the truth. I wasn't choosing cruelty. I was choosing safety. When I got home, it was after 2:20 a.m., and the house felt too quiet. In the hallway, family photos lined the wall. Beach trips, school plays, holiday dinners at my aunt's place. I removed the frames one by one, not in anger, but like clearing a work site before rebuilding. I didn't destroy anything. I just stored them in a box in the guest closet. Ava's picture stayed out. Nia's face vanished from the everyday view. It was a small, private boundary, and I needed it. In the kitchen, I wiped the counters twice, another of my habits, because the mess made my thoughts feel louder. Then I sat at the table until dawn, listening to distant trucks and a neighbor's sprinkler ticking on and off, rehearsing calm answers for Ava's questions. Wednesday morning, I did something I almost never did. I postponed client calls. After dropping Ava at school, I took the long way back, passing the corner store where the owner always greeted Ava with a peppermint, and the barber shop where my lineup stayed sharp because I hated looking disheveled. That small pride felt important now. At the bank, the branch manager recognized me and tried to smile. I asked to restrict joint spending and open a separate account. He hesitated until I showed him the message. His face changed from polite discomfort to genuine concern. "We can help you protect your funds," he said quietly. Paperwork slid across the desk. Each signature felt like cutting a thread that had been tied too tightly around my life. By early afternoon, I had shifted a legal portion of our shared savings into an account only I could access, froze our joint credit cards, and updated auto payments So Ava's school expenses and household utilities stayed stable. I didn't touch anything that would look vindictive. Malik's instructions echoed in my head like a metronome. My phone buzzed with a text from Nia. Dinner at this waterfront place you always talk about. Wish you were here. Kiss Ava for me. The casual cruelty made my stomach turn. There was no mention of homework, bedtime, or whether Ava had eaten vegetables. It was as if parenting was a chore she assumed I would cover while she chased a feeling. I didn't respond. I forwarded the message to Malik instead. At 3:10 p.m., I met with Dion Cates, the investigator Malik recommended. His office sat behind a laundromat in a strip mall outside the city, the kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and a soda machine that rattled when it dispensed. Dion looked like a man who noticed everything. Neat beard, sharp eyes, posture trained by past authority. He asked for hotel information, flight details, and Trevor's full name. I told him Key West and the resort Nia had used in an old email confirmation that popped up in our shared inbox. Easy work, Dion said. Photos, timestamps, statements, if needed. Anything public, anything observable, nothing illegal. I nodded. I need proof that holds up in court, especially anything showing she ignored Ava's routine. Dion typed without looking at the keyboard, a practiced rhythm like a drummer. Dion asked about Trevor. I gave him what I knew. Finance executive, married to a woman named Camille, and connected to a medical tech company with a flashy social footprint. Dion raised his brows. That spouse might care, he said. Sometimes the other side becomes helpful without intending to. I didn't comment. My goal wasn't gossip. My goal was certainty. Dion studied me for a moment. Most people come in here shaking, he said. They want confirmation, then they collapse. You've already decided. My voice stayed even. I decide based on evidence. I'm gathering evidence. He nodded once, as if he respected the difference. When I left, I felt steadier than I had since the text arrived. Purpose, even painful purpose, can make a person stand straighter. That evening, Ava asked a question I had dreaded since the first chime. When is Mom coming back? We stood in the school pickup line, surrounded by car doors shutting and kids laughing, the ordinary sounds of a world that hadn't cracked. I knelt so my eyes met hers. Your mom is traveling, I said. She will be away for a little while. Ava's lips tightened. She always calls before bed. Shame moved through me, because I already knew Nia hadn't called once. I hated lying to my child, but I hated burdening her more. Sometimes adults get distracted. I said, careful and slow. We're still okay. Then I offered ice cream from the small shop near the church with the tall white steeple. Ava agreed, but her eyes kept flicking toward my phone whenever it vibrated. That night the house felt hollow. Nia's absence wasn't just quiet. It was missing motion. No music in the living room, no scented candles, no sudden ideas for redecorating. I poured a drink I didn't want, just enough to warm my chest, and sat at the kitchen table under the dim light above the sink. The phone rang. Nia's mother, Denise Caldwell. Denise had always treated me kindly, calling me baby in a gentle way that made me miss my own late grandmother. Darius, she said, worry layered into every syllable. I've been calling Nia, and she isn't picking up. Is everything all right? I kept my voice controlled. She's away, I said. Her phone might be off. Denise paused. She told me she was in Atlanta helping her sister. Her sister just told me she hasn't seen her. The cover story was unraveling on its own. Denise's voice sharpened. Is she with Trevor again? The question struck like a second betrayal. This wasn't new. This had history. I didn't answer fast enough, and silence confessed for me. Denise exhaled, something heavy and regretful. I thought you knew, she said softly. Before the wedding, there was a situation. Her father, and I thought it was finished. She promised us it was finished. My jaw tightened. I heard my own voice from far away. I need to go, Miss Caldwell. She tried to say more, but I ended the call. I stared at the countertop, at a single crumb I hadn't wiped, and suddenly that crumb felt like the whole world, small, overlooked, and proof that my attention had been aimed in the wrong places. That night, Any lingering hope that this was a one-time lapse disappeared. Thursday morning, Dion delivered the first batch. I made Ava breakfast first. She requested smiley face pancakes, and I focused on flipping them evenly because small rituals steadied me. After school drop-off, I opened Dion's message in my car. Photos. Nia by a pool with Trevor's hand on her waist. Nia at a candlelit dinner leaning toward him, laughing with her whole face the way she hadn't laughed with me in years. A timestamp in the corner read 8:47 p.m., the hour Ava usually brushed her teeth and begged for just one more chapter. Then there was a short video clip from a resort bar. Nia, slightly unsteady, raised a glass and said, "To freedom." Trevor replied, "And the husbands who don't press too hard." My stomach turned into stone. The worst part wasn't the toast. It was what followed. Trevor's voice. "You could leave him." Nia's laugh, light and careless. "It's complicated. Ava, the house, the way he plans everything. Darius is safe." She said safe the way someone described a seatbelt. Useful, not cherished. "He'll always be there," she added, like my loyalty was a fixed feature of the weather. Trevor kissed her, and the video ended. I sat motionless, hands on the steering wheel, breathing shallowly. There was shame mixed in with rage, because part of me had built my identity around being dependable. I had believed dependability earned respect. At that moment, I realized Nia had treated it like permission. I forwarded everything to Malik without comment. Then I stared at a playground across the parking lot, where parents pushed swings, and I felt jealous of their ignorance. Malik called within minutes. "These timestamps help," he said. "A judge cares about routine. Bedtime matters. School stability matters." He told me he would file for emergency temporary custody by the next morning and request a quick hearing early the following week. "We will frame it as abandonment of responsibility," Malik said. I started to protest. Nia hadn't abandoned Ava physically. Ava was with me. Malik interrupted gently. "In court language, leaving a child's daily care to the other parent while you travel for an affair, without honest disclosure and without maintaining contact, is negligent judgment. Judges call it what it is." I swallowed. My throat felt raw. Malik kept talking, methodical and calm. "Do not contact her. Let her first meaningful communication come through counsel. Every word you write can become evidence." That afternoon, I drove to Greenville, South Carolina, for a meeting I had arranged with someone who could influence Trevor's world. The building belonged to a healthcare equipment company whose CEO, Camille Rhodes, was married to Trevor. I had used my firm's reputation and a vague hint about risk exposure to secure a slot on Camille's calendar. During the drive, Nia called 3 times. I let each call die in silence, then listened to voicemails at a rest stop where trucks idled and wind rattled a flagpole. My car declined. Nia complained. "Fix this." Another message. "I can't get into our accounts. Are you serious?" No mention of Ava. Not one question about homework or whether she had practiced choir songs. The absence of concern was louder than any insult. I deleted the messages and continued driving, fingers drumming once on the wheel every few miles, my anxious rhythm. Camille's office felt like a museum. Sleek floors, bright art, controlled air that smelled faintly of jasmine. Her assistant escorted me past glass walls into a conference room with a skyline view. Camille Rhodes entered without flourish. Mid-40s, close-cropped hair, posture straight, as if she lived inside discipline. She didn't waste words. "You said there might be exposure," she began. I interrupted before she could set the agenda. "I'm here about your husband." I placed my phone on the table and opened Dion's photo set. Camille looked down, scanned each image with a stillness that was almost frightening, and set the phone back as if it were simply another file. "Why are you bringing me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve the truth," I said, "and because our situations overlap." She studied me like she was evaluating a supplier. "Talk." I told Camille everything, carefully. The text, the lies, the lack of contact with Ava, the evidence. Camille asked questions with surgical precision. Dates, times, who had access to what accounts. When I mentioned Malik's planned custody petition, She nodded once, as if aligning pieces in her head. Trevor signed a post-nuptial agreement after a prior incident, she said, voice flat. Infidelity triggers loss of benefits and immediate termination under our ethics clause. I blinked. Termination? Camille's eyes didn't soften. My board does not tolerate reputational risk, and Trevor has been warned before. She watched the bar clip twice, then turned the phone face down. This is strong, she said. You want protection for your child. I want clarity for my company and my life. She leaned forward. Go home to your daughter. I will handle my side. As I stood to leave, Camille asked one more question. What does your wife value most besides your child? The question landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Nia had always cared about perception, about curated photos, about being admired for having it all. Her image, I answered. People think she has a perfect life. Camille's mouth tightened into something almost like a smile. Then she will feel the consequences where she lives, she said, not physically, but socially. She handed me a card with a private number. If anything changes, call. Otherwise, focus on the child. Court's like fathers who show up. Her handshake was firm, and her grip felt like a promise that she didn't mind using. Power. When I left the building, I felt uneasy. Not because Camille was wrong, but because she was effective in a way that made me wonder what I had just invited into my life. Friday and Saturday, I kept Ava's routine intact. We took the city bus once, just because she loved sitting by the window and counting murals along the route. I bought her a honey bun from a corner store, where the cashier called her Little Scholar. We ate lunch at a small diner with sticky menus and a jukebox that played old soul songs softly in the background. I wanted a record of normalcy, not staged, just real. My phone buzzed with updates from Malik and Dion, but I ignored them when Ava was watching. At the zoo, she laughed at the otters and asked me why flamingos stood on one leg. I answered patiently and felt grief under the surface, because these should have been shared moments. While Ava slept at my parents' house Saturday night, I finally reviewed the messages stacked on my phone. Nia's tone had shifted from irritation to panic. The resort says they'll lock me out if I can't pay. Fix this now. Dion sent fresh photos. Nia in a lobby argued with clerk, mascara smudged, shoulders tense. Trevor on the phone, agitated. Another message arrived from Camille. Phase 1 complete. Trevor's access has been revoked. He is returning home. Your wife remains there. I poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the back step as the wind moved through the trees. I didn't feel joy. I felt a grim symmetry. Nia had assumed I would absorb the inconvenience of her choices. Now inconvenience was visiting her, and she had no practice carrying it. Nia called late. I answered only because my mind flashed to Ava and worst-case scenarios. Nia's voice sounded raw. Finally, she said, "Why are you ignoring me?" "I've been taking care of Ava," I replied. I kept my tone flat, not cruel, not gentle. Your cards not working doesn't outrank your child. Nia inhaled sharply. I did not abandon her. I took a trip. You're her father, too. The entitlement in her words scraped something inside me. You lied, I said. You traveled with Trevor. You stopped calling your daughter. You texted me as if I'm a babysitter you pay with marriage. Silence. Then softer. How do you know Trevor is here? I didn't answer the question. There's a hearing Monday morning. I said, family court, temporary custody. Nia's breath caught. Custody? Her voice climbed toward disbelief. You're trying to take Ava from me over one mistake. The phrase one mistake lit a fuse in me, an emotional trigger I didn't know I had. Being minimized. You made a choice, I said controlled. Choices add up. You told him I'm safe and that I'll always be there. You treated my loyalty like a guarantee you could gamble with. Nia started crying, messy and frightened. Please, Darius, let me explain. I can come home. I'll end it. I swear. For a second, a weak part of me imagined a conversation, a repair, a version of us that didn't exist. Then Ava's face rose in my mind, trusting, and I remembered the timestamps during bedtime. Get a lawyer, I said. Be on time. I ended the call before her sobs could pull me backward. Sunday morning arrived with bright winter sun and the sound of a neighbor's leaf blower whining like an annoyed insect. Malik confirmed the hearing time and told me to keep communication minimal. No arguments, he reminded me. No emotional speeches. Stability is your strongest evidence. Dion sent a report, written statements from resort staff, receipts, and a timeline that mapped Nia's movements with clean precision. Another message from Camille arrived. Trevor has been terminated. His access to corporate property has been reclaimed. Public messaging is being managed. I stared at that text and felt a chill. Camille was efficient in a way I couldn't imitate without becoming someone else. I didn't want revenge to become my personality. I wanted protection to be my boundary. But I also refused to rescue Nia from consequences she had chosen with full awareness. On Monday, I wore my best suit, the charcoal one Ava said made me look like a superhero with paperwork. My parents took Ava to school so she wouldn't see a courthouse. The building in Charlotte was quieter than television made it seem. Hallways smelled like disinfectant and old air. Malik met me near the courtroom, calm as always, carrying a folder thick enough to be a weapon if paper could bruise. "She's here," he murmured, "with her parents. No counsel that I can see." I didn't look back. I kept my eyes forward, jaw set, shoulders relaxed. Malik's presence steadied me the way a seatbelt steadies a driver. Not comfort, but protection. The judge, Cynthia Rowe, entered with controlled authority. Gray curls pinned neatly, glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed filings with slow attention, the kind that made time feel heavier. Malik presented our petition for emergency temporary custody and outlined the grounds. Deception, out-of-state travel for an affair, lack of contact with Ava, and evidence of prioritizing a romantic relationship over bedtime routines and parental responsibilities. When the bar clip played, Nia made a small sound, like embarrassment turning physical. Her mother reached for her hand. Her father sat rigid, the posture of a man watching his family's image crack in public. Judge Rowe turned toward Nia. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, voice measured, "do you wish to respond?" Nia stood, smoothing her dress with trembling fingers, her favorite self-soothing habit. Adjust, 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 as if fabric could restore control. "Your Honor," she began, "I made a terrible decision. I lied about where I was going. I spent time with someone I should not have." Her voice tightened when she said should not, the way she used to say it when Ava spilled juice. "But I love my daughter. I have been her primary caregiver. I know her teachers and her fears and her bedtime routine. My husband works long hours. He is a good father, but I'm the one who handles the daily details." Her eyes flicked toward me, pleading for recognition. I kept my gaze on the judge, because Malik had warned me that pity could be used as leverage. Judge Rowe removed her glasses and paused, as if weighing harm against habit. "Good parenting requires judgment," she said at last. "The evidence shows deception, poor priorities, and a troubling lack of consistency in contact with the child." She granted temporary full custody to me with supervised visitation twice weekly and ordered that Ava remain in the home to maintain school stability. Nia's shoulders sagged, and her mother pulled her close. The gavel sound echoed sharply, final and clean. Malik squeezed my shoulder once. Brief, professional, outside the courtroom. The air felt colder than it had when I entered. I didn't feel victorious. I felt certain. I was choosing Ava's stability over Nia's comfort, and I would keep choosing it as long as I had to. The first thing I did after leaving the courthouse was buy Ava a new backpack, not because she needed it, but because I needed a symbolic reset that did not involve rage. At a strip mall store near Pinecrest Avenue, she chose one with bright planets and a silver zipper that clicked like a tiny bell. I kept the receipt folded into neat quarters, my habit when I want proof I can hold. That afternoon, I picked her up from school and acted normal, asking about spelling tests and cafeteria pizza. Inside, I monitored every detail. Homework time, bath time, bedtime, because stability had become my quiet argument. Nia's first supervised visit happened 2 days later at a family center in a renovated church annex near Atlanta Street, a place that smelled like lemon cleaner and crayons. The staff greeted her with cautious warmth, the tone people use when they are trained to be kind but not fooled. Nia arrived early, hair smooth into a sleek bun, eyes puffy, hands twisting her wedding ring even though the marriage was already hollow. Ava ran to her without hesitation, and that hurt in a way I did not show. I sat in the waiting area, listening to a distant choir rehearsal drifting through thin walls, reminding myself that Ava's love was not a vote against me. After the visit, Ava asked why Mom looked tired. Her question was gentle, not accusing. I kept my hands on the steering wheel and watched the city bus pull away from the curb, its brakes hissing like a long exhale. Adults carry stress in their faces, I said. It does not mean you caused it. Ava stared out the window at storefronts and mural-painted brick. I want Mom to be happy, she murmured. Shame pricked me, because part of me wanted Nia to feel unhappy long enough to understand what she had treated as disposable. I swallowed that impulse. Ava deserved parents who made decisions with her mind, not emotions that used her as fuel. Malik instructed me to communicate through documented channels only, so I began using a co-parenting app that time-stamped every message and stored every schedule change. It felt clinical, but I preferred clinical to chaotic. Nia tested boundaries immediately. She requested unsupervised time, just for a quick dinner, then tried to pivot into late-night phone calls to talk like adults. I declined with short, polite sentences and offered reasonable alternatives. Each time I pressed send, I felt the pull of our history, then the sting of her safe label, and I anchored myself by washing one dish, drying it, and putting it away. That tiny ritual kept my thoughts from spiraling into what-ifs. Meanwhile, Camille's world erupted in a different city. News about Trevor's termination circulated in polished whispers first, then in public headlines once a local business blog caught the thread. I did not seek the articles out, but clients mentioned them casually, as if the scandal was just another market fluctuation. Trevor's reputation collapsed fast because his confidence had been built on access, and access had been revoked. Camille sent one brief note. Proceeding with counsel, evidence secured. That was all. I understand her language now. It was not cold. It was focused. Still, I felt uneasy about how quickly power could reassign people's status, like changing the labels on file folders. Nia moved into her parents' townhouse in a quiet Atlanta neighborhood where the lawns were clipped short and the mailboxes matched. She found work through her father's contacts in an accounting office near a shopping corridor lined with chain restaurants and a barbershop that played gospel on weekends. Her pride took a hit, and pride was one of her emotional triggers. When she felt embarrassed, she got sharp during one visitation handoff. She snapped, "You like controlling everything." I kept my voice even. I like Ava having a predictable life. Nia opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, blinking rapidly as if she hated herself for needing to blink at all. Ava squeezed my hand, unaware of the battlefield she had walked into. The next month became a calendar of small adjustments. Ava joined an after-school reading program, and I started attending a men's group at a neighborhood church on Thursday nights, partly for guidance, partly because silence had started to press against my ears. The church had a squeaky wooden floor and an old deacon who brewed too strong coffee, but the conversations were honest. I never told the full story, just the shapes of it. Betrayal, custody, rebuilding. One man said, "Your child needs peace more than revenge." That sentence lodged inside me, challenging the part of my heart that still wanted symmetry to look like punishment. Nia tried to repair her image the way she always did. Curated photos with Ava at supervised visits, carefully written posts about growth and family, vague captions that implied she was thriving. At first I felt anger when I noticed them, then I felt something else, a tired pity. She was still trying to negotiate perception, while her real life was unraveling. Ava noticed, too, in her own way. "Mom takes a lot of pictures now," she said one evening, sipping hot chocolate. "She tells me to smile bigger." I kept my reply light. "Pictures are nice, but your feelings matter more than looking perfect." Ava nodded as if filing that away for later. The way kids do when they sense an adult is giving them a tool. A week later, Nia requested a private conversation, without lawyers. She asked to meet at a diner near a transit hub in Charlotte, one of those places with cracked leather booths and the constant clatter of plates. I agreed only because Malik advised that calm, limited communication could look cooperative in court. I arrived early and sat with my back to the wall, another habit I did not realize I had until stress magnified it. Nia walked in wearing a beige coat, hair glossy, eyes tired. She slid into the booth and tapped her fingernail against a sugar packet holder, a jittery tick I had seen during arguments years ago. "I didn't think you had this in you," she said quietly. I stirred my coffee without drinking it, watching the swirl of cream fade into brown. "You didn't give me a reason to show it," I replied. Nia's mouth tightened. "Was our whole marriage just you playing a role?" That question hit a tender place, because it assumed my kindness was a costume. "No," I said. "I meant it." She looked relieved for half a second, then resentful. "Then why did you make it so hard?" Her voice cracked hard. I leaned forward slightly. "You made it hard when you lied, left, and stopped calling your child." Nia stared at the tabletop. "I was tired," she whispered, as if exhaustion could excuse deception. I did not argue. I just let the silence hold the truth. Nia attempted a different angle. "Did you ever wonder why I went back to Trevor?" The question sounded rehearsed, the way she used to practice difficult conversations in the mirror. I heard the implied accusation. Something missing, something lacking, something you failed to provide. My jaw tightened. If something was missing, I said, "You could have spoken to me. You chose secrecy." Nia's eyes flashed. "And you chose to team up with his wife." I paused because it was not entirely untrue. I had accepted Camille's help. "I chose to protect Ava," I said, "and I chose not to rescue you for what you decided to do." Nia's shoulders slumped. She pressed her thumb against the edge of her phone case, a self-soothing habit. "I hate that I did this," she admitted, and I believed her. But belief no longer carried trust. The divorce moved forward with the slow grind of paperwork and scheduled hearings. Malik built our case around stability. Ava's school attendance, my consistent routine, the supervised visit reports, and documented communication. Nia's attorney argued that Nia had been a devoted mother for years, and that her mistake should not define her long-term role. The word mistake kept returning like a pebble in a shoe. I refused to fight it publicly, but privately I rewired my thinking. A mistake is knocking over a glass, not leaving your child's routine to chase a thrill, and then acting shocked when consequences arrive. During this period, I started jogging at dawn not for fitness, but because pounding pavement quieted the loop thoughts I never said out loud. Winter settled in with brittle mornings and early darkness. The sound of our neighborhood changed. Fewer kids outside, more cars starting with grumbling engines, the occasional bark of a dog echoing off bare trees. Ava began sleeping with her bedroom door cracked open, a small anxiety she tried to hide. One night she admitted, "I don't like when people argue." Self-blame flickered across her face, subtle but real. "It's my fault, isn't it?" If I was easier, I stopped her gently, lifting her chin. "No," I said. "Adults are responsible for adult choices." She held my gaze for a long time, then nodded, but I could tell the idea would need repeating, like a lesson that takes months to stick. 3 months after the custody order, the settlement conference arrived. Nia looked smaller than she used to, not physically, but in posture, as if she had learned caution the hard way. We sat in a conference room that smelled like printer toner and stale mints. Malik spoke for me most of the time, and Nia's attorney spoke for her. They debated equity, spousal support, visitation steps, and the timeline for moving from supervised to unsupervised time if Nia complied with requirements. I listened, taking notes in neat blocks, another of my coping behaviors. When the conversation turned to money, Nia's face tightened with shame. She had always felt in control. Losing access had exposed how fragile her control had been. The final agreement gave Nia more than my anger wanted, but less than her entitlement expected. She would have a structured path to expanded visitation based on consistent behavior, counseling, and documented contact. I kept the house because Ava's stability mattered. Nia received a modest settlement and a clear budget that made her flinch. When the mediator stepped out for copies, Nia and I were briefly alone. "I never thought you would actually walk away," she said. Her voice was flat, almost curious. I answered honestly. I didn't walk away. You did. Nia swallowed. I thought you would forgive me. I did not say what I was thinking, that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. I only said, I'm choosing Ava's peace. After the divorce became official, the house felt both lighter and lonelier. The rooms were the same size, the furniture in the same places, yet the air carried less noise. I started playing soft instrumental music while cooking, not because I loved it, but because silence had started sounding like judgment. Ava adapted in her own ways. She taped her drawings on the fridge more often, like she was trying to anchor us with color. Some nights she asked to ride the bus just because, and we would take a short loop through familiar streets, watching people climb on with grocery bags and tired faces. Those rides reminded me that many families carried invisible burdens, and that surviving was sometimes quieter than thriving. One evening, Camille called unexpectedly. Her voice was calm, controlled, and clipped like a person who does not waste breath. My divorce is final, she said. Trevor accepted terms. No appeals. I congratulated her, because congratulations with expected language, though I sensed she did not need them. There was a pause. I am in Charlotte for a conference next week, she added. Dinner would be acceptable if you're open to it. I pictured Camille's sharp focus, her ability to move pieces, her confidence. I also pictured Ava at the kitchen table, coloring, needing softness more than intrigue. Not right now, I said. My priority is my daughter. Camille did not sound offended. Understood, she replied. Some things are worth patience. Then she ended the call, leaving me unsettled by how measured her interest felt. A few days later, Ava asked a question that made me pull over near a corner store with a neon sign humming in the dusk. Dad, she said, voice small, is Mom coming back to live here? I held the steering wheel and chose words carefully, because children carry senses like luggage for years. No, sweetheart, I said, your mom and I are not going to live together again. Ava's face tightened and softened, as if she had expected it, but still needed to feel it. Is it because of Key West? My chest tightened. Where did you hear that? Ava shrugged. Grandma was talking on the phone. She said Mom made a big mistake on a trip. I looked at my child and felt a flash of anger at adults who spoke carelessly around her. Adults should not have said that near you, I replied. What matters is that you are loved. Ava was quiet for a while, then asked, Can I still love Mom even if she messed up? Her question carried a wisdom that felt too big for 7. Yes, I answered immediately. You can love her. Loving her does not mean you approve of everything she does. Ava nodded, absorbing the distinction, then reached across to pat my cheek the way she did when she sensed I was tense. Do not be sad, she said. We are still a team. That nearly broke me. I turned my face slightly toward the window, so she would not see my eyes gloss. Shame rose again, not because I had failed, but because I had once believed protecting a family meant tolerating anything. Ava reminded me that protection sometimes means changing the shape of life. The next crisis came with rain. It was a cold March evening, water tapping steadily against windows and gutter pipes gurgling like tired throats. Nia called 5 times an hour. I finally answered because my mind jumped to Ava's safety. Is Ava okay? I asked. She's fine, Nia said quickly, then stumbled into her real problem. Her parents were selling their townhouse and relocating to Florida for retirement. Nia could not afford her new apartment on her salary. I need help, she said, voice trembling. Just temporary. I can't lose a roof. If I lose housing, I could lose visitation. The irony sat heavy. The woman who had treated me as permanent had lost every safety net at once. My first impulse was to say no and let consequence complete its lesson. Then Ava's question, can I still love Mom, echoed. I hated that my mercy would look like weakness, but I hated more the idea of Ava losing her mother entirely. I told Nia I would speak to Malik about a limited housing stipend tied to strict conditions, employment proof, counseling attendance, and consistent visitation. Nia whispered, Thank you, sounding both relieved and ashamed. I do not deserve it, she added. You're right. I said not cruelly, just plainly, "This is for Ava." After the call, I sat in my car in the driveway. Rain pattered on the roof, and felt something unexpected, a loosening in my chest. The anger that had fueled me for months was fading. It did not vanish in a dramatic moment. It simply thinned, like fog lifting. Nia was no longer the center of my emotional weather. She had become a responsibility to manage in relation to Ava, nothing more. 2 days later, Nia went to her parents' townhouse to collect boxes she had stored in the garage. What she found instead was a stack of belongings left under the overhang, still exposed to wind-blown rain. Cardboard softened, corners collapsing, tape peeling. Her clothes, books, and framed photos had been packed with haste, not care. A note in a plastic sleeve sat on top. Her parents had decided they were done saving her from herself. Nia called me, voice shaking, and I did not answer. She texted, "Please, I have nowhere to put my things. They will not even let me inside." I stared at the message, then at Ava's homework folder on the counter, and I felt the hard truth. Nia was encountering the kind of rejection she had handed out casually, assuming it would never return. Sandra, Nia's cousin who lived in Charlotte, reached out later that night. "Nia is at my place," she wrote. "She is a mess. Her parents left her stuff out like she is a stranger." I did not reply immediately. I stood at the sink and washed my hands longer than necessary, watching soap bubbles slide down my fingers. A part of me felt satisfaction, and I disliked that part of me. Another part felt pity, and I distrusted that part too. Conflicting emotions braided together, leaving me tired. I finally told Sandra, "Thank you for helping. Keep Ava out of the adult details." That was all. I refused to become Nia's rescuer again. I also refused to become the villain in Ava's story. The stipend agreement was signed the next week. Malik made sure it read like a contract, not a favor. Nia had to meet terms monthly, and any missed obligations would trigger review. She signed with shaky hands, eyes down. I did not gloat. I simply treated it like another boundary in a life built from boundaries now. Ava's visits with Nia became more consistent. Nia showed up on time, dressed neatly, hair pulled back, gifts small but thoughtful, library books, a puzzle, a scarf she insisted Ava would look adorable wearing. Ava loved the attention and did not understand the price. Sometimes I watched them together and felt the ache of what might have been, then reminded myself that might have been was not the same as was. Spring brought softer air and the sound of children playing longer outside. Ava's sleep improved, and her teachers reported she was participating more in class. I started volunteering at her school once a month, reading to the class in a calm voice. The kids asked funny questions and laughed at my serious delivery, and their laughter felt like medicine I did not know I needed. Nia remained more subdued than before, as if she was learning to carry consequences without collapsing. During one handoff, she said, "You change," and the words held accusation and awe at once. I looked at her and answered the honest version. I stopped confusing patience with permission. Nia blinked rapidly and looked away, embarrassed by a truth she could not argue with. One Saturday, Ava and I went to a neighborhood barbershop where the clippers buzzed and sports talk floated over the chairs. The barber, a friendly man named Mr. Kean, asked Ava if she wanted a lollipop. She chose grape and sat swinging her legs, watching my haircut like it was a science project. "Your dad is steady," Mr. Kean told her. Ava nodded solemnly, then said, "He keeps promises." That phrase returned again, and it struck me how much children notice. I had once thought big gestures mattered most. Now I understand that consistency is the loudest love. On the walk home, Ava skipped over cracks in the sidewalk and asked if we could plant flowers. I agreed because building a future could be as small as dirt and seeds. Nia attempted one last emotional appeal in early summer. She called late, voice quiet, asking if we could talk without lawyers, just as people who once loved each other. The phrase "once loved" pressed on an old bruise. I met her in a public park near a splash pad, where families gathered, because public spaces encourage good behavior. Nia sat on a bench, twisting her ring again, then admitted she had chased excitement because she felt invisible in the routine. I wanted to feel chosen, she said. The admission sounded honest, and it also sounded selfish. You were chosen, I replied. You just wanted a choice without responsibility. Nia's eyes filled. Do you hate me? She asked. I surprised myself by answering calmly. I do not hate you. I do not trust you. There is a difference. She nodded slowly, as if learning a new language. After that conversation, something settled. Nia stopped pushing for reconciliation and focused on being present during her allotted time. I stopped monitoring her every move like a detective and started paying attention to my own healing. I went to counseling, partly for Ava, partly because I could feel bitterness try and become my default. The counselor asked what I feared most. I said, becoming a man who cannot be gentle again. That answer embarrassed me, but it was true. I had built walls quickly, and walls keep danger out, but they also keep warmth out. I wanted to raise Ava in a home where boundaries existed without turning love into a locked room. Camille sent one more message months later. Hope your daughter is well. If you ever need a strategic referral, call. It was a kind offer wrapped in her style. Practical, controlled, efficient. I appreciated it and did not respond beyond a simple thank you. I had learned that alliances born from mutual betrayal could blur into something unhealthy if I was not careful. Ava needed me present, not distracted by new complexity. I focused on small wins. Ava learning to ride her bike without training wheels, her choir performance at church, her laughter when she spilled lemonade and then giggled instead of panicking. Those moments were the real evidence of a stable life. One afternoon, Ava asked if adults can fix their mistakes. We were at a corner store buying oranges, and the clerk was playing a slow song on a tiny radio behind the counter. I paid, folded the receipt, then looked at Ava. Sometimes, I said, but fixing does not always mean everything goes back to the way it was. Ava considered this, cheeks puffing slightly in thought. So Mom could be better, but we still live here, she concluded. Yes, I said, relieved that she could hold nuance. She slipped her hand into mine and squeezed. That is okay, she said, and in that moment I realized Ava had adapted not because she was unhurt, but because she was resilient. My job was to protect that resilience, not exploit it. On a humid August evening, thunder rolled in the distance like furniture being dragged across a floor. Nia arrived for a visitation handoff, carrying a small paper bag from a bakery. She offered it with a cautious smile. For you, she said. It's your favorite. It was true, and the gesture was so small it could have been harmless. I thanked her and took it, but I did not interpret it as a doorway back into marriage. Nia lingered a second too long, then said, I am trying. I nodded. Keep trying, I replied. Ava will notice more than anyone. Nia's eyes glistened, and she turned away quickly, as if tears were an unacceptable expense in public. Ava hugged her and ran back to me, happy and unaware the tightrope adults were walking around her. Over time, the anger I'd carried like armor turned into a dull memory, the way a healed cut still reminds you where it was. I stopped replaying the bar clip in my head. I stopped imagining what I should have said earlier in our marriage. Self-blame tried to sneak in sometimes, whispering that if I had worked fewer hours, if I planned more date nights, if I had noticed faster, maybe this would not have happened. Then I would remember the simplest truth. Loyalty does not require perfect conditions. It requires character. Nia had made choices, and I had made choices in response. My choice was to build a life where Ava could breathe. In the evenings, when the neighborhood quieted and cicadas buzzed, I found myself smiling again without forcing it. One Saturday, Ava and I walked past a diner where Nia and I had spoken months earlier. Ava asked if we could go inside for pancakes. We sat in the same crack booth. The waitress recognized me and asked about Ava's school year. Ava answered proudly, listing her new teacher, her best friend, and the book she was reading. I listened, stunned by how much the world could change while a child continued growing. When the pancakes arrived, Ava cut them into neat squares, a habit she had developed, and said, "Dad, I like our house." I swallowed. "I do too," I said. The sentence carried more weight than she understood. It meant I kept what mattered. It meant I protected you. That night, Ava fell asleep mid-sentence while telling me about a science experiment. I covered her with a blanket and sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. The night outside was warm, and somewhere a train horn sounded far off, low and lonely. I thought about the man I had been before the text, the version of myself who believed patience would always be rewarded. I did not hate that man. He had loved sincerely. I also respected the man I had become, the one who could love sincerely and still draw a line. I walked to the kitchen, wiped the counters once, then stopped myself from wiping again. I did not need that ritual tonight. I was okay. In the months that followed, Nia remained part of Ava's life in a structured way, and Ava continued becoming herself. Curious, kind, and surprisingly brave. I learned to answer hard questions without bitterness, to hold boundaries without cruelty, and to let consequences teach what lectures never could. When I look back, I understood the real loss was not my marriage. It was the illusion that being safe meant being disposable. I had kept my dignity by refusing to beg for respect. I had kept my daughter's stability by choosing calm over chaos, documentation over drama, and truth over convenient stories. And when Ava squeezed my hand and said, "We are going to be fine," I believed her. If you made it to the end, tell me this. Was it justice or too far? Drop your city in the comments so I could do a dedicated story for the top location. And hit subscribe if you want more real-life twists like this. The end.